We all know Derek Jeter, the captain, the 5-time champion, the king of clutch, the face of the Yankees franchise. We all know Derek Jeter, or do we? Among the many accolades and accomplishments of Jeter's career, one of the cornerstones of his legacy was his defense, which won him 5 Gold Gloves and put him on highlight reels nearly every single night during his career. But with the hindsight of more advanced defensive analytics, we start to see now that Jeter was not only not an elite defender, but arguably one of the worst defensive shortstops in baseball. So it begs the question, how did he fool so many in the baseball community and get them to buy into the hype for so long? This is the story of how Derek Jeter fooled nearly everyone about his defense. This is Sports Oddity. Roses are red, violets are blue. Derek Jeter has a DRS of -165 since 2002. To put this into perspective, this would mean that Jeter cost the Yankees roughly 16 games due to his poor defense alone, and that's not even counting the first 8 years of his career. If these numbers come as a shock to you, then you're far from the only one. After all, one of the things Jeter was most well known for were the miraculous plays that he'd come up with on a regular basis, some of which would become iconic moments in baseball history. The flip, the dive, and of course, his signature jump throw. His flair for the dramatic made him a staple on highlight reels all across the country on a nightly basis, and his status as captain gave him a job security that was very seldom seen in Major League Baseball. In fact, by 2004, he had so much clout that he forced the reigning league MVP, who was not only a better shortstop than him, but was also getting paid much more money than he was, to move permanently to third base. And of course, along with that clout came the accolades. From 2004 to 2006, he would win 3 straight Gold Glove awards at shortstop, and he would win another 2 awards in 2009 and 2010. But here's the thing about those seasons. Even though those Gold Glove years do include the only season that he was above average in terms of DRS, they also contain some of his worst performances ever on defense. For example, during his 2005 Gold Glove campaign, he gave up a total of 27 runs according to DRS, the worst he's ever scored on that metric. And according to Fangraphs defensive metrics, he was the second worst full-time shortstop that season, behind only Michael Young. And therein lies the rub about Derek Jeter's career. How can someone be that bad on defense and still be considered the best in the game at his position? In order to learn more about this disconnect, we have to learn a little bit about bias. In particular, there are 2 types of biases that are at play here in regards to Jeter. The first is called availability bias. It's essentially what happens when you think that readily available examples are more representative than they actually are. Jeter is actually a really good example of this. When most people think of Derek Jeter, they probably don't think of an error he made or times he looked really bad out on the field. Chances are they probably immediately go to one of those iconic plays that he made every so often. Things like the flip, the dive, and the jump throw that I was talking about earlier. Essentially, because those big plays were so memorable in their context, and we're more likely to see them on things like MLB Network or a YouTube highlight compilation, it's a lot easier for us to remember those great plays that Jeter made than to remember those times that he made an error or let a ball get right past him on shortstop. And because it's much easier for us to remember those great plays than it is for us to remember the duds, it's also much easier for us to remember Derek Jeter as a much better defender than he actually was, mainly because the memories that we already have associated with him tend to skew him in a positive light. This type of bias not only contributes to, but is aided by another type of bias, a bias that's known as the halo effect. This is a type of reputational bias, which basically says that if you have a good experience with a certain person, a service, or an entity, you typically have a better opinion about that entity or person than you otherwise would. This affects Jeter in a couple of ways. The first is that because he is good at other things out on the diamond, namely his offensive performance, and especially when it comes to performing in clutch situations, people tend to subconsciously elevate his performance in other areas of the game, namely his defense. Second, because many of his most iconic moments of his career came when he was out on the field, people tend to look at those moments and raise their perceptions of his defensive ability purely based on those moments. As one might imagine, this works in a very similar way to availability bias, and in fact, these two types of biases tend to feed off each other to create a narrative feedback loop. This is most likely what we're seeing when it comes to Derek Jeter's defense, and it's why seeing those statistics for the first time might be so shocking. But what does knowing this actually tell us about Derek Jeter, or the game as a whole for that matter? Well, there are a couple of things that we can take away from this. The first is that while we may have drastically overestimated Jeter's defensive abilities, we might have actually underrated the other parts of his game. After all, even with zero defensive contributions whatsoever, he still managed to accrue 73 FWAR throughout his Hall of Fame career. Not only did he post a lifetime batting average of .310 and a WRC plus of 119, but he was also a really great base runner who averaged nearly 20 stolen bases a season throughout his career. Now, as for the game itself, the myth of Derek Jeter's defense is a reminder that even though we have more tools at our disposal to measure the game today, the people in this community, the fans, the analysts, and the people in front offices, are still just human. And they're still just as susceptible to biases, mistakes in judgment, and coming to false conclusions. In other words, Derek Jeter didn't fool us. We fooled ourselves. But the fact that we did is a testament to him. It's a testament to the way he made us feel watching him play night after night, to all of the incredible moments that he created over the course of his career, to his service not just as a player, but as an ambassador to the game, a man who brought baseball to the masses and made it cool. For all of that and more, he will always have our respect, even if his defense might be a little shoddier than we might have remembered. How's it going, everyone? Connor here with the Diamond, and thank you so much for watching this episode of Sports Oddity. If you liked what you saw, you can check out more of our content by clicking the link right next to me, or if you're in the mood for more baseball content, we've curated some of our favorite baseball videos into a playlist that you can check out down below. As always, be sure to like, subscribe, and follow us on social media at The Diamond US on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.